What's up, YouTube? Adam Grover coming at you. Want to talk about some T5 stuff. Maybe some tricks to make them live. Things you can do to make them a little stronger. Just to help you guys out. If you have a street Mustang, that you're looking to cruise around, and you're looking to go 12s, 11s, even into the 10s, a T5 can do it. Some people will claim you're on borrowed time. They're going to say, you can only get so many passes. And I'm not going to disagree with that. Everything has a lifespan. But there are some things you can do to make it live. And you can get away with going into the 10s with them. And I'm not talking about like tipping 10s. I'm talking about like, getting into the 10s with a factory T5. Now, personally, my T5, I can't remember where it came from. Actually, now I think about it, I do remember. A guy had a Mustang that we were building for him. And we pulled the motor and trans out. I forget what he wanted done exactly, but he was going to go automatic. So a friend of mine got the motor and trans from him, and somehow I ended up with the transmission. So part of me wanted to prove a point, because the guy was like, I'd like to keep the stick, but it's never going to live. Never going to live. So I wanted to prove the point that it would live. So I took that transmission, and the input shaft was, wobbly like they all are. When they're worn out, they're worn out. But I mean, this thing was pretty bad. You lift up, down, it click, 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 click. If you ever had a T5 out, you know what I'm talking about. So I pulled the trans apart to inspect it, and I didn't like that input shaft wobble at all. But took it apart, pulled that retainer off that holds the input shaft in, and I pulled the race out for the input shaft bearing. And all I could find was a snap ring. So I had big enough that would clear where the input shaft goes through was a big snap ring. Big black snap ring. So I put it in the retainer, popped the race back in, bolted it up, and the trans was tight. And I'm like, man, that's not good. It's pretty tight. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't know what to do, I have to get shims. I forget why I just didn't go buy shims. I might not have known where to get them or something at the time. But I'm like, I might have just wanted trans in the car, to be honest with you. I think I might have just picked it up, felt it, and then did it. I don't know. I can't remember. It was quite a while ago now, but excuse me. But I said, let me see if I can get it to spin with the clutch. So I slid a disc on, it spun. So I'm like, all right, it'll wear in. It spins, so it might rob a little bit of power, but as long as the car moves after I put it in, doesn't make any noise, I'm sending it. If I got to, I can pull the trans out. Not that big of a deal. I was working out of my buddy's garage at the time. I didn't have my house or nothing. So I'm like, I had some shelter where I could pull the car in, work on it, do things I had to do. I was building the whole car in his garage. He let me do that. So, put it together, and that snap ring is still in the transmission to this day. That was back in 2016 or 17 when I put that setup together. So, 7 or 8 years ago. But in the trans, I still have it. It made multiple passes. It went some 12-second passes, a good amount of 11-second passes. Went into 10s on nitrous. 1072 was the fastest pace I got with that transmission. Excuse me. And, it lived. The gear set lived. I did break shift forks because I'm abusive. I showed that thing no mercy. If it's going to break, it's going to break. My first Mustang that I owned, it was a twin to this green car that I own now at the time. Except I had a sunroof, and I had way too much clutch in it. And I went through 3 transmissions in a couple months. I mean, just grenading the things. And I wasn't even hard on them. Just pop them in third, let off the clutch, hit the gas, and gone. So, and that was a mid-13 second car. Capable of going 12s, but mid-13s. I went 1350s with it. Looking back, you know, you always look back and say, I could have did this, could have did that, and it would have went faster. But went mid-13s. So, I broke a T5 going 13s, and now I can go 10s with them pretty confidently that they'll stay together. Because, I mean, I went 10s with it a couple times. It just didn't go at 1070. It made a multiple, like, low 11 passes, and then I think I went like a 1080 a couple times, and then the 1076 or 78 and a 72 or something like that. So it went 10s a handful of times at least. And then I did end up, I had to put a clutch in it because it was hard on the clutch. I was smoking the clutch at the end because I had just this factory replacement AutoZone clutch in it. And it came to the point where it was like, all right, if I'm going to do the clutch, might as well do a trans. And I already had a G-force setup, so I switched over to that. But I want to stick to the stock T5 stuff for you guys that might not have the budget to go out and buy a TKX, a T56, a TKO, or even an upgraded T5 setup. Because the stock stuff can take you a long way where you can have fun at least for a season. At least. I mean, I don't even want to lie to you guys how many passes I put on that T5, the stock one. I mean, I drove it to work. I beat on it going to work. I raced people on the street with it. I raced at the track with it. And I'm not talking like I made 2 passes at the track. I mean, when I go to the track, I make passes. The only way I'm making 3 passes is if the car goes exactly what I want it to go and I'm content, or something happened where I can only get 3 passes in. So this thing, I made at least 5 passes one night, and I'm going to the track Tuesday night, Friday night. If they were open Thursday, I went down. You know, I'm going 2-3 times a week, putting 5 passes on this car. Going out on the weekends, racing people with this car, you know, even if it's just my buddies having fun. If the car felt like it was going to pull good, hopping on it, wailing the gear, you get the idea. This thing had a lot of passes on it. And that's after whatever it went through prior to my ownership, the gear set. I don't know how old the gear set was, but I know the trans was pretty whooped. So, that being said, there's tricks you got to do to keep a trans alive like that, though. You just don't say, I want a spec stage 3. I'm going to run a drag radial. I want to street drive this, though, so I'm going to leave like a 355 gear in it. And, you know, going to have all the amenities in the car. And the car is a full weight GT, that 3,500 pounds race weight. And, you know, heavy wheels and all that stuff. And my T5 is going to live behind a blown 347 stroker. No. That thing probably won't even make it down the road. The tricks are, gear helps, believe it or not. So if you put, you know, like I would say on a stick car, you have 5 gears. And you can fit a 28-inch tire on these. If you don't feel like cutting stuff up and banging, a 28x9 fits. You know, you might have to trim a little bit for a 28x9. We had to set my dad's car without cutting it, but they did rub around corners. The typical Fox body stuff. If you get a Fox, tires rub. If they're over 8 inches wide, they are going to rub. It doesn't matter if it's a 26, a 27, 28, whatever, they rub if they're over 8 inches wide. Now, you could run like a QuickTime Pro Hoosier, something like that, bias ply, and get away with like a 10 because they are a little bit skinnier. They measure, I think, if it's a 10, it's 8 or 8.5 inches wide. I think it's a 2-inch difference between that and a slick, if I remember correctly. A slick is your tread width when you order a slick tire. It's a 28 by 10.5, and that's your tread. Where a QuickTime Pro is measured sidewall to sidewall. So a 28-10.5 QuickTime Pro will be a really 8 or 8.5 inches wide tread width. So they fit better. But, you know, that's just something that you got to do. If you want to run a 26-inch tire, you probably get away with like a 390 gear. 410. If you're going to run a 28, you could put like a 430 in the car. And I mean, this depends on your combination, but you know, a stock car can get away with a 28 430 combination, a 390 and a 26 combination all day. A factory Mustang, you take a bone stock car off the showroom floor back in 90 and put a 390 with a 26 or a 28 with a 430, it'll take it. It'll be fine. It's not going to run out. It's not going to be dead. It'll handle it. You might be tapped out going through the traps, but that's what you want. But that's the stuff that helps keep the transmission alive. Anything to make it spin easier will keep the trans alive. Second thing is clutch. Don't over clutch it. A lot of guys, they want the clutch. Oh, I don't want it to slip. You're worried about slip. Slip is your friend when it comes to a factory T5 transmission. Slip will help it live. And mind you, I had no upgrades to my trans except that little snap ring I plopped in it. It was a factory trans. I didn't have upgraded anything in it. I didn't put braces on it because they do make a cluster support, which I will get to later in this video. They do make some aftermarket stuff you can do to upgrade your T5 and make it stronger, and they're relatively cheap stuff if you can find it, if it's still out there, because the stuff's getting harder to find now. But the tire, the gear, that stuff matters. Weight, I get if you're wanting a cruiser and you don't want to pull weight out of it, that's okay. If you do the other stuff, you'll have... all this stuff adds up to longevity. The more you do, the longer it's going to last. You know, a stock car with the stock T5 in it, they last a while when they were fresh. But you got to make sure that the trans is tight. If that thing's sloppy, it's going to grenade. It doesn't matter what it's in. You could put it in a 15-second car, and if that thing's shaking, like how my input shaft was, real sloppy, it's going to eventually break. It's a matter of when, not if. And that goes even for a good one. They do break. Mine, I still have it. It never broke the gear set, but I did break forks constantly because I was hard on it. You know, you will break parts. I'm not saying you're never going to ever break anything in it, but they can live is my point with this. I see these guys, they post videos, can it handle 400 horse with a stock T5? Oh my gosh, wow. 300 horse, stock T5. Whoo, setting the world on fire. You can go relatively fast with a stock T5. Like I said, 10s. 10s is pretty quick out of a stick car in general, let alone a T5. And honestly, I would love to see how fast I can make one go with some minor upgrades. I honestly think that it would break after a couple passes, but I think in my car I probably could have got a low 10-second pass out of it, to be honest. But, you know, you can add clutch to a factory T5, just not much. So if you want something a little stronger than stock, look at the clamping pressures. Personally, I wouldn't go anything more than like a dual friction. A spec stage 1, spec is aggressive. spec anything. No reason to put a spec clutch in anything with a T5. Even a good T5, I wouldn't put a spec behind it or in front of it. But personally, I know a guy who did, and he had luck with his, but my friend had a G101A with a spec stage 1 making 800 horse, and it was fine. It didn't slip. It slipped a little bit off the start, but up top it held. When a clutch is going to slip, it's going to slip up top worse than the start. It's just how he had it set up. He had it set up so it would slip coming out of the hole, so it didn't bang so hard. The slip is your friend. That's another thing with the T5. Set them up so they slip. Some of you guys like your pedal halfway to the floor. If you want the trains to live, tough cookies. It's something that you can do to get used to with your clutch being a little higher. That slip makes a big difference. If you have that thing where it just clamps with no slip in it, it's going to break. Doesn't matter if it's a stock clutch or not. If you bogging, personally, I like the bog effect. Like if I'm on a bad road or something, I like bogging the car. It is hard on it though. So you can break stuff with that, when it falls on its face. It rattles everything through the drivetrain, everything. It's aggressive. But that's why if you have the clutch adjusted high where it can slip, that bog, it still might bog, but that clutch is going to take the brunt of the bog because it's going to lead back to that clutch, and it's going to try to slip the clutch more than it will grenade something. The weight, getting back to that, weight helps, keeps anything alive. Rears, axles, all of it. So transmission life, yes. So the lighter you can get the car, longer your parts are going to last in general, let alone not just your trans, parts in general. So yeah, I'm not saying you got to cut your car to pieces, but if this is a weekend warrior and, you're not worried about AC, you're not worried about power seats, you're not worried about putting people in the back of it, you're not worried about having a spare tire with you, stupid stuff like that, bumper supports, easy stuff that you can pull out, the car still is pretty full, you can do that stuff and it'll help the car stay together. And this really goes for any transmission. I mean, this isn't just T5s. It's just, I see a lot of stuff with the foxbody pages because I'm a part of a lot of them. And I see it all the time. T5, 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 T5. They're junk. They're junk. They're this. They blow up. They do this. And they do. They break. My girls came apart driving down the highway at 60 mile an hour. Came unglued. Most likely it ran out of fluid. There's a reason why it came unglued. Maybe it had a chipped tooth and finally it got caught and just grenaded. Who knows? I honestly can't tell you why it blew up because I haven't taken it apart yet to look at it. But all that stuff matters. Wheels being lighter, all of that. It does play a toll. I'm not saying if you put a lightweight wheel on the car, your trans is going to live automatically and it's never going to have a problem. I'm saying that it all adds up. Might give you an extra half a pass. I don't know. I don't have an exact number of how much longer it's going to live by putting a lightweight rear drag wheel on it so it can spin easier. But all this stuff plays a toll in keeping parts together. How you drive it. Big one. Big one. I'm not trying to pick anybody apart, but had a couple guys, I'm not going to mention their names, but the letting off, and I mean like letting off. I don't mean like a little blip on the gas. I mean letting off, pulling the gear, smacking the thing, dumping the clutch and smacking it, or smacking the thing then dumping the clutch. Bad. If that's how you drive a stick, put an automatic in the car. Just do yourself a favor. Just right now. Put an automatic in it. If you weren't prepared to launch the car, if you weren't prepared to drive the thing like an animal, and I'm not saying I'm an animal, but I give it everything I got. If you're not tired after making a pass behind a stick shift car, you are not driving it hard enough. And you might think, well, driving it hard's going to break it. No. Letting off and rocking the car back and forth between gears, that's what breaks it. You are taking that transmission, it's trying to mesh together. The gears are trying to go like this, and when you're letting off, it's rocking the gears like this backwards. But it might not do it like, obviously this is excessive, but it's vibrating because it's wanting to go back because you're actually bouncing the gears off of each other. It'll break it. I had a guy, I just want to see how he drove the car. So I said, jump on it. Went for a ride with him. And literally it was like, car, it was like, I said, there's no way this car's that slow. So that is impossible. This feels like a 14-second car. There's no way. No way. Like it's a roller motor with an intake carb exhaust with like at least a 355, 373 gear on a street tire. There's no way. I mean, the thing, I can't describe to you how it looked when I saw it take off. Just like bogging in first gear, I'm talking about. And then not even hitting the tire in second. It's bit in by second gear. Now, I understand it's a stock car on a street tire, but for crying out loud, I'm like, I had to jump in it just to see how, if it was the car. Because, you know, if I do something to a car, even if it's stock crap, you know, if I do the little tricks to make it come up to where it should run decent, like I noticed a problem, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and this was a problem. No, I never seen a roller foxbody car 87 to 92 where it just was that dead. So I'm like, do you mind if I take this down the road? When he came back with it, he goes, yeah, sure, I don't care. And this is where it comes to play when you see, like, even these heads cam intake cars, some of them that go like 13s and 12s. This is what right here. Same thing. This driver. And it's wild because people say the driver mod. And you wouldn't think it's that big of a difference. But that car went from bogging in first gear and planting the tire in first gear with him driving it to blowing the tires off through second, sideways down the road with me behind it. And all I did, because I knew with a vacuum secondary carb, it had to be held to the floor automatically, or else the secondaries are going to try to open up once it's going, and it's too late by that point. One, that was the first mistake that the gentleman made. Two, yanking it into the next gear, especially with a vacuum secondary carb. I mean, you let off with a vacuum secondary, and then you stomp back into it. Secondaries are going to want to shut, and then they're going to come back open. So I just held this thing to the floor, revved it up, about 335, maybe 4 grand, and pushed it to the floor, let it sting up, popped the clutch, blew the tires off, and just pulled on the shifter and bang that clutch, and boom, second gear, sideways down the road. Crab walking. Right down the road. That stuff makes a big difference. I've seen guys even that can drive sticks. My cousins. They're both brothers in the racing. One guy's going 1380 or something with the car, the owner of it. My one cousin hops in, goes to 1360. Car picked up. Boom. Big difference. So my other cousin goes, let me try that thing. Think I can go faster. A little rivalry between brothers. Fun, you know. And his brother goes, what? No. I'm driving that thing hard. There's no way. He goes, watch. 1355. Pointed to the scoreboard and said 1355. This man goes out, drives it, 1355. Another 10th. And that's just in drivers. 3 different guys behind the wheel. It went faster each time. I've done the same thing in other people's cars. I've seen other guys do it. I worked with a buddy of mine. We had a customer at the time. He's a friend. And he was going, 13s or something with this car, or 1290s or something, 1280-ish. And my buddy hopped in, 1260, 1250, something like that. It makes a big difference. Another one of my friends, scared to death to break his car. Man, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm driving the thing, Adam. I'm driving. I say, you're not. So you're not driving it. And I kind of do this thing where, I'll over-exaggerate a little bit and, really lay into someone if I'm trying to help them, depending who it is. This guy in particular, because he's like family to me. So to give him drive, I'll really stick it to him. So you're not driving it. You're scared to death of it. You're scared you're going to break it. I get it, because, if you can't afford to fix the car, then I don't know what to tell you. So all I know is we handed you a 12-1 car. Literally, it was proven. This car went 12-1. Handed it to you, and you're going 1270, 1290 with it. You went 1290, got it to a 1270. I told you the stuff to do to it, because you switched tires up on it and things. I told you what to do to it. You don't want to listen. I don't know what to tell you. I said, I can lead you to water. I can't make you drink, bro. That's it. Well, what do you want me to do? I said, you gotta leave. I said, you're leaving like a pansy. Leave. So hold the thing to the floor. So things gotta be floored when you leave. Some people don't get it. Hold the thing to the floor. He did it. Guess what? Car's back into the 12-1s. Went 1217. And I still bust on him. I say, hey, you still haven't gone faster than the previous owner with it. But you're getting there. But I do that to drive him. To fuel him. Sometimes I do it just to tick him off. Probably watch this and curse me out. He'll be laughing now. But that's what you do. I try to give him the drive. So that way it's like, okay, another kid. Guy I was friends with. Still friends with him, but we used to hang out quite often. Same deal. Driving the car. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, man. With him, I was a little bit easier on him because he came around pretty quick. I was actually surprised. The kid, you told him what to do, he listened. And it was like, he was on it. It was like, wow, all right. It was like watching a totally different driver. I mean, he drove decent, but a couple tenths. But that makes or breaks a car. When you have a combination together, and you have a driver that, say, he's even mediocre, then you have a car going 1330s, and you shove someone in it and goes 1280s. Somebody will walk up to that car and go, 1330s. But that same person, after they see it go 12s, they might walk up to it and look at it and go, wow, this goes 1280s? That little bit, half a second, is a big difference. Even 2 tenths, a 13.0 to a 12.8, whatever. I had a CFI car, and these guys, I'll never forget it. I was on the phone with a buddy of mine, trying to figure stuff out with this car. It's CFI, never messed with it before, fuel injected. Car was a T5 car, and it was actually a Mustang L with a T5 put in it. So I had the CFI stuff on it, headers, 355 gears. I didn't care if I broke it, so I did have drag radials, but they were bullet, they were shot. But, I mean, to the point where cords were almost hanging out of them. I think after that track pass, I think they might have had cords hanging out of them. But the car was slow. Went 13, I got it to go 1340. But, the guys, they walk up to the car, and they're walking past it, actually, and I notice them just walking past, and they're looking, and they stop, and they come back, they look, And they go, is that CFI on that? I said, yeah. And they said, we're going to watch this car. So, okay, whatever. And I mean, when I drove this car, I held this thing dead to the floor. Like, leaving, it was floored. Like, the car, it was probably one of my most fun cars to drive because I didn't care if it broke. At the time, I was, in my life, I had another car and stuff to drive, so I didn't care. So I held the thing dead to the floor. Shift light blaring, whatever the thing wound to, it was floored. Like, held it staged, started revving it up, lights came down, floored it. By the second bulb, I'm already floored, and then by the time the third bulb's about to be lit, I'm popping the clutch and the car's leaving. If you hear this squeaky chair, I'm sorry. You know, it's driving me nuts, but and I apologize if it drives you guys nuts. But, you know, that's how I left with the car, and I just rode gears. Killed them. Like, just boom, boom. As hard as I could. I had a long handle in it, short throw shifter. I don't know what clutch they had in it. It wasn't real aggressive, though. But, the car went ended up going 1340 with that setup on it. And I remember them guys coming back to me and them going, that car pops the wheel up when you leave with it. I'm like, yeah. And then the next pass I made with it, they watch it again. They come back. You know, that thing pops the wheel up in second gear too? I'm like, yeah, because I could feel the strut, you know, the car come up. And then when I bang second, it would pop it back up. And then, I guess in third it even did it, the one pass. I didn't know it did it in third, but they're like, even third gear. It was like every pass I made, they came back telling me another gear popped the wheel. Because the front end was just so loose on the car, you could take it and I could bounce the front end off the ground sitting here in front of you if I had the car here right now. Literally. But, you know, it was fun to drive. It was probably faster in a 13.4 looking back. I could have did stuff to get it in the 12s. I did end up putting a carburetor on it, and then I got rid of it, and they did go 1270s with it. But it's actually the intake I have on my car now is I put on that. It was my intake. I put it on that, sold the car, and then I bought it back. But getting back to it, T5, you got to drive them. That's my point. And the driver makes a big difference. It'll make it either live or not. So if you're scared to pull on the gear and keep it where it can keep rotating forward, that's important. If you can't do that, then, you know, if you want to learn, that's fine. But I'm not going to say that you're not going to go through some transmissions trying to learn if you can't get it down. It's going to take the life out. But I know some guys who just couldn't do it. And then you have the guys with the clutch halfway to the floor. If that's you, then yeah, T5 is probably not for you. But if you want to do some of the tricks that I put out in this video, I can almost guarantee you you're going to get a little bit more life out of your trans, and you know, you'll have some fun. If you were worried about putting a T5 in the car, hopefully you're not now, you know, if that's all your goals are. But it never hurts to put a good transmission in. Funny fact, a buddy of mine put a face-plated TKO 600 in his car and broke it like the second pass out after having the T5 with the spec clutch behind it for years. He had a Z-spec trans T5 and it was fine. So, kind of rambled on this video, but I would like to get to the stuff you can do to help make a T5 strong. The cluster support, that'll help it automatically. Input shaft, you're going to have to shim it, but shim the input shaft, get the trans tight, make sure everything's centered. You know, you don't want it tight where the case is going to explode. Mine is probably too tight, but I didn't care. But, you know, you make it so I like them on the stiff side, personally. I don't want it where I can roll it and it free spins. I want it where if I go to roll it, it stops instantly because it's going to wear in. So me personally, I set them up a little on the tighter side. So when I shim the T5s, I shim them a little bit on the tight side. I've had them where they were too tight and I shouldn't have ran them that way, but it's my own stuff, so I don't care. But if somebody else, were to bring me a trans and I were to build it for them, I would shim it where it's where you spin it. You got to spin it with a little bit of force behind it, not too much. But shimming it, making it tight. That's one. The bronze bushing for the shifter hole. Good shifter, short throw shifter. Personal preference. I like a B&M Ripper or like a Steeda Tower Power, whatever that thing's called. It has 3 holes in it for shifter mounting locations. It has 2 different mounting locations. Personally, I like that because I like my shifter up a little high. G-Force long handle. That's something that helped me. And I'll never go back to another handle in a foxbody Mustang, at least. The 55, I am going to use a ball with a Hurst handle just because it's old school. But in something like a Mustang, that G-Force long handle, you can't beat it. The pistol grip G-Force long. It's all one solid piece of aluminum. You're not going to break it. You ain't got to worry about it. And, it's angled a specific way to help shift the car. Getting back to the short throw shifter, make sure you get something that self-centers good. That's a little trick that'll help you drive it a little easier. A worn out shifter where it's sloppy, they suck. And you've really got to push it over to get into third and stuff. For instance, if you were to drive a really sloppy shifter and then you rebuild it or you put a good tight shifter in it, you'll probably go into 5th gear trying to hit third if you're used to the sloppy shifter. That's the type of difference it'll make. It's a pretty drastic difference. Bronze shift forks, if they still make them. I noticed they started making bronze shift pads to go on the factory forks. Those will work too, but you still have the factory fork piece. I'm looking because I used to have a fork hanging on the wall that was broke. And I don't know where it's at. I was going to show you guys where it broke. It's up here. See if I can grab it. It's right in front of my face, but it's up on the wall pretty high, so hopefully I don't fall. This thing's all dusty. But that's what I did. This is out of my transmission I was telling you about. This thing's filthy. I'm going to clean this thing up a little bit, wipe it off. Got dust on it. This thing's been sitting up here since I moved into the house. But this is why I say bronze shift forks. Because it broke the entire fork. So your pad is here. This is a plastic nylon shift pad. So that's your shift pad. So a bronze one will probably make it a little tighter. I never used the bronze shift pads. But you can see this is actually bowed and wearing. But the bronze ones will help. Let's see, it's actually cracked. Right there. Let's see if you can probably see it. But right there, it's got a crack in it right here. But that's the stuff I went through. Instead of breaking the 3rd gear or input shafts, I actually never broke an input shaft in a T5 yet. But that's it. This was my problem. I went through 2 or 3 sets of these. It got to the point where I just replaced the broken one because it was like, yeah, there's no sense putting a set in. I just put one in. But went through that, and I had a problem with it popping out of 1st gear. I think the T keys or the block rings or something. I can't remember what it was, but that was really it. It might have even been this jamming up on me, to be honest. I can't remember. It's been so long now. But this is why I say bronze shift forks, though. Getting back to what I'm saying, because you won't have this problem here. It's a softer metal, and it'll stay together. The only thing they do is they will start to, right here, they'll start to pinch. So this will start to kind of thin out. That's if they still make them. G-Force stopped making a lot of T5 stuff, unfortunately. But you might be able to find a set of bronze shift forks or something, used, or other companies. You can look into them, try to find them. Or if you know somebody who's savvy, you can make a set, might even get lucky and find somebody who can do that. You can put a better input shaft in if you want to go 26 spline. That ain't going to hurt nothing. But this is the stuff that I was saying is pretty cheap. Like the bronze shift forks, I think they were like $80 or something like that. And then the cluster support, that's relatively cheap, like $20. A steel retainer for the input shaft, they're nice. That'll help hold everything tight, won't wear out. I think there's like an aluminum one that has like a steel insert. So if you get the all steel one, they're a little bit stronger. That'll help. And then cluster support, I guess that's like $20. I think the retainer was, for the input shaft, that was like $30. Some shims, you can buy shims online almost anywhere, as long as they fit around the shaft. Then if you want to start getting into better synchronizers and stuff, you can. That stuff depends on your budget and what you're trying to do. If you're planning on pulling it out, I wouldn't go crazy. Cluster support you can never go wrong with, period. That's something that now if I have a trans out of a car, I just pull the tail shaft out and do that instantly. The shimming the input shaft, like little things like that make a big difference. So really, at the moment, that's all I can think of as far as that stuff goes. And it's all stuff that'll help keep it together and keep you guys on the road a little bit longer to have fun. So yeah, your T5 can live a good while. Don't be worried about it. You can make it happen. The lighter the car, the better. Bias ply tire, lightweight drive shaft. I like aluminum flywheels. Some people don't. But the flywheel, I don't think is really going to make or break the trans, really. The only way it would is if you used the steel one and it kept it rotating while the tires are trying, it might snap an input shaft. So, but you could argue that point with it bogging with an aluminum flywheel. But like I said, the clutch slip in between there is going to make the difference with that. So hopefully if you had a problem where it tried to overspin, it would haze the clutch a little bit and still power through and be okay. So as far as that goes, though, pretty much it as far as the T5 stuff goes. Yes, you can go 10s with them. You can go 11s. You can go 12s, 13s. 10s is probably about your limit unless you got a super light car. So, there it is, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's long, but it's got some pretty decent information in it. And hopefully it helps you guys out. Alright? You guys have a good one, and I'll catch you around sometime. Thanks for watching.